Beyond, and hello everyone. My name is Jonathon Dornbush, and this is Podcast Beyond, episode 664. You may not have expected this episode this week, and frankly, neither did we, but nonetheless, we're back a week earlier than we had intended from our hiatus because there's just so much darn PlayStation and gaming news to talk about as the fall season kicks in. And of course, none of it is the PS5 release date or price, but we'll get there eventually. Anyway, this week I'm joined by Max Scoville.
Hootaloo!
Janet Garcia.
What's up?
And our good pal, Crash Bandicoot. Thanks for being here, Crash. There he is. Of course, we'll get a lot of insightful commentary. He's going to leak every level of Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time. I'm very much looking forward to it. If you look into his eyes through the whole episode, you'll be able to find out every level. No, I do want to preface just by saying, of course, Gamescom just ended. So, of course, a little bit of the team is to the winds. Brian is unfortunately out this week. Lucy had a doctor's appointment and couldn't be with us. But we have plenty of stuff to talk about this week. And thank you to Max and Jennifer taking the time this week to jump in to talk about all the PlayStation and just gaming news ahead of the busy fall, which is technically already started. And we'll get to that in a little bit. But I did want to sort of start things off with a general PlayStation topic that came out. Again, I feel like we're getting all of our PlayStation news these days from corporate reports and store listings and just things that come out of nowhere but are not official Sony presentations to fans. But this one, Sony put out a corporate report for the company at large, and there are a couple key things that I wanted to mention on the PlayStation side of it. The main takeaways from it were, one, that they're looking to put more games on PC, which we can get to in a bit. But two, the big hand-in-hand thing was that, one, they want to be releasing a steadier stream of first-party games more quickly, and two, they are still looking to acquire more studios. So even though they acquired Insomniac in 2019, and Insomniac is going to be delivering 2 launch window PS5 games, they are still looking for new studios to acquire. So I wanted to ask the both of you, like, what you've enjoyed of Sony's first-party output this generation aside. What did you all think of, I guess, the volume of games they were putting out? I felt like there's been a pretty steady supply of PlayStation exclusives, especially big ones. Like just this year we had Dreams, MLB The Show, Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima, and then like third-party exclusives like Predator and Iron Man VR. It's not like it's been quiet for them. Do you feel like they need to increase the amount of games that are being put out on the exclusive side?
I would love to see more from like the VR front of things. And I do like that there aren't, the less VR exclusives there are, the better it is for VR in general, because then just like more of those games can be played and discussed. But I just really want to see PlayStation support VR even more going forward in the next gen. So I would love to see extra stuff on that front. But other than that, I think they always do a really good job at having a really nice spread of games across genres. It's sort of hard to not be able to find a game to play on PlayStation, no matter what kind of gamer you are and what you gravitate towards. And that's something that I really think is a strength. And the more they continue acquisitions, the more they can expand and delve deep across genres.
Max, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm pretty happy right now because we don't really know a whole lot of what's coming. You know, we've got a few IPs to look forward to and a few new games, but I don't know. I feel like there was a pretty good cadence there for a minute, and as long as we're not sort of reaching that point where, was it like E3 2018 where they just unveiled everything, and that was like we just got Ghost of Tsushima, like wasn't that revealed then? Like it's like that
was Paris Games Week 2017, but yeah, they basically revealed every game for the PS4 between 2016 and 2017, and then all of those games took from 2017 to 2020 to come out.
So like I feel like it's less that, I mean, I assume that there's a bunch of stuff happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. I think it's more, I would be happier with like a more even cadence of releases, regardless of how often first party games actually come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. There was definitely, I feel like it's definitely this generation in particular been a lot of, hey, this game has this release date in the fall. Actually, it's coming out in the spring. And then maybe it's coming out even a little later the year after. Like there were definitely a lot of games that had release dates. And I think that's something that Sony's aware of. They don't want to be announcing release dates anymore unless they're pretty sure they're going to be hitting that release date, because Uncharted 4 in particular, I think had 3 or 4 release dates. And so it's the kind of thing where they probably don't want to have to keep figuring out the marketing budget for when a new release date is going to be, unlike Tenet, which has had 17 release dates since everything happened this year. But I was curious what you all thought of, like, in terms of other companies they should acquire, because Sony is in this interesting place of their Sony first party stable is really well respected, sort of almost across the board, and for the most part make somewhat similar games when it comes to genre and perspective and all that. Obviously, there are exceptions when it comes to MLB The Show and Gran Turismo and whatnot, but in terms of the Sony signature has become third-person action, adventure, semi-open world games. Obviously, different mechanics and different whatnot, but that's sort of what they're known for. Would you want to see them be branching out more? I remember when Sean Layden was, of course, still with Sony, he had talked about one of the things he knew they were not great at was multiplayer support for exclusive games, and he thought that was something they could improve on. But I guess, Janet, starting with you, like, what do you think they're missing in their exclusive slate? You mentioned VR, of course, but like, what companies would you like them to maybe acquire if those companies were interested?
Yeah, so I mean, they have a lot of the heavy hitters, which is a great problem to have because a lot of the things that we would always come to mind, they actually did. So yay, that's awesome. One studio that comes to mind for me would be Supermassive Games, which I know is kind of unlikely considering they just got to deal with Bandai Namco to do the Dark Pictures anthology. But I love story-driven experiences, and Sony's known for doing that, but through the lens of action adventure, while Supermassive's library is a lot more horror choices, narrative driven. I think it's really cool they have that VR background. So like I said earlier, that could help with that PSVR library as well. So that would be my main pick. But I also am interested in, I guess this is kind of a cop-out answer, but the studios that I haven't heard of, I really like what they've done teaming up with, what's the name of the studio that does Concrete Genie? I'm blanking on the name. Pixel Opus, is it? Oh, and for some reason, I can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh.
Oh, and I heard Max right now.
No, I can't hear Jonathan either. It's just one of those.
I muted my mic and forgot I did that.
Okay.
Cool.
I thought that was just
as long as it wasn't my fault, we're good.
No, yeah, it was totally my fault. I would say I didn't have coffee, but I had 2 cups this morning. No, yeah, Pixel Opus, and they are actually they used to be third party, and then they acquired them right around the time they made Entwined, I believe. But yeah, that was sort of I think they're really different from the other teams in terms of like scope and scale, and they're a much smaller team. But I like that to what you were saying. Like, I didn't know Pixel Opus before Sony took them on, and I'm now glad they're part of the stable. Max, what about you?
Yeah, I feel like I saw both of your answers, and I think you picked the good ones. I'm racking my brains to try to think of what either didn't get scooped up by Microsoft or isn't, or seems like something that would actually be up for sale. I mean, there's a, part of me that's like, oh, what about FromSoft? But I just feel like that wouldn't happen. Like they're too kind of established as a studio. I mean, you wrote Blue Point. I think that's a pretty obvious one. That seems like really likely.
That one's really surprising to me that it hasn't happened already, just because they always work so hand in hand. Like, obviously they've done ports for other companies, but clearly Sony likes working with Blue Point. So.
Yeah. I mean, obviously they also got their hands dirty with the Demon Souls remake, which is like, I feel like a lot of port houses, I feel like it's a really good way to kind of like learn the ropes developing for a platform. Cause you don't have to really, you're not as focused on like having to build a game from the ground up. It's kind of like, you're not copying somebody's work, but you're basically like working a lot of just sort of stuff behind the scenes and fiddling around with that.
You have a blueprint, for lack of a better term, for Blue Point when it comes to what you develop for next. And yeah, definitely them getting to do such a big, ambitious, exclusive title right at the jump of the PS5 feels like a pretty good indicator that we'll see more from them this generation. But yeah, speaking to what I was, some of my suggestions that you were referencing, the other ones that I had mentioned were similar to Janet. Like, I would love Supergiant, I think is awesome, and the more money they could be given would be great, but it seems like they're doing really well with Hades, which has been in early access and is finally coming to consoles with a Switch at least this fall. So it feels like they're in a good place, but they've been sort of Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre I've really associated with PlayStation as time has gone on. So they feel like they fit within that wheelhouse of like a smaller team, but one with the right backing can make really creative, unexpected experiences. And then I had also mentioned, I feel like this whole thing was happening for me with Control, where I would be following the like tweets of Remedy employees and PlayStation employees and trying to like connect the dots of like, oh, Shuhei replied 3 times on that week, and then the Remedy PR person said this many thank yous to the PlayStation tweet. Maybe they're trying to get together as companies, but Remedy made a publishing deal with Epic, so probably not going to happen. But obviously Control sort of had this like PlayStation exclusive deal with them, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see that at least on the console front. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm sort of torn on like how many studios they should acquire, because like Xbox is doing every studio. Well, I guess I'm just curious what you guys think, because Xbox has acquired studios specifically with the stated goal of like, we need to support Game Pass and we need to have games coming out at a regular cadence that are exclusive so people have a reason to subscribe to Game Pass. PlayStation, as of right now, doesn't have that, and they already are pretty well known for exclusives. So I wonder like what the goal would be other than just having more games. But it's not like they've been in a bad place when it comes to that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I'm like, for me, my big thing would be getting more on the indie front and more on the VR front, because that does feel like 2 areas where I don't really want to say lacking, because they're doing so much in comparison to their competitors. But those are things that I think are niches that Sony and PlayStation can really blow up in. I mean, we saw it with like having Astro Bot on VR. That's still not a game a lot of people have played simply because it's on PSVR. But it's such like an amazing game and like a landmark and like set in the stand. Like it was such a big deal and such a conversation point that having more of those, like they'll never get the same attention as like a AAA blockbuster game. But I think they're really important, especially in forming the identity of how we're going to talk about the PS5 moving forward. And also when we look back on it, what is it going to be known for? I do feel like Sony had sort of like, for me, like PlayStation was the place for indies for such a long time. But in recent history, for me, that's switched over to Nintendo, because it's like a handheld, and also just the way they go about even just showcasing their games when they have directs and things. I think that's definitely a place where Sony used to dominate, and they could really use maybe a few more studios or just a different kind of focusing maybe in their state of plays to kind of remind people what are the other types of experiences you can get on a PlayStation console, and what does PlayStation stand for in terms of next-gen gaming.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. And it feels like they have been starting to do that, especially they hired Greg Rice from Double Fine to sort of help like lead the indie charge. And there are other people like Sean Benson, other members of that team that really do focus on the indie outreach. And at least in recent months, it feels like they've been drumming that up more. But yeah, they don't have sort of the like indie world showcase moniker, things like that Nintendo is now known for. That I totally agree. I used to think of PlayStation, especially in the Vita era, as like they were the place for indies, and that doesn't quite happen. But yeah, I also like on the VR front, it's really interesting because they are saying like, hey, VR is going to be supported in the PS5 era, and we're, PSVR will be backward compatible. We're not talking about PSVR 2 yet, but like that feels all but given. And to have that stable, it is that give and take of more VR availability of games, the more people will talk about it, but also having that platform shored up will mean more people will come to this and support that platform. So.
I wonder if there's some pretty fierce competition on the VR space, because like Oculus has been nailing down exclusive deals for like left and right. And we've seen a lot of sort of timed exclusivity of stuff going on Rift, or not Rift, but it's called Oculus, yeah. But
when you put all those together, it means something.
That's the name, yeah.
And I mean, I get the feeling that was very much like that is Facebook money. Like that's like a crazy, like I think they're just kind of really coming out swinging and just trying to get like as much, cool stuff on that storefront as possible.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, Sony, it always sort of, PSVR always like I love it. I'm fascinated by it. It sort of kind of feels like it has waning support, but I mean, apparently not if it's going to be supported by PS5. And it's a VR, exactly. It is such a niche thing. Like I think there was a minute where we were like, is this the future of gaming? And it's like, not really, it's like just a weird little sort of side, side excursion. It's a hobby within a hobby. But yeah, I don't know. When it comes down to like what kind of a studio Sony would go scooping up, I think the multiplayer thing is interesting, because like that, you look at their sort of their portfolio of what they have, and they're really, it's not much in the multiplayer front, and that's obviously something that they really, when you see games as a service and these whole ecosystems of player bases, like that's the kind of thing that I imagine they'd want to attract.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's like clearly not a shortage of people playing PlayStation hardware, so it's like does it really matter if you don't have a multiplayer presence if people are playing Destiny on your platform or Fortnite or whatever?
Yeah, that might come down to them making more of these exclusive deals. Like, I don't think the Spider-Man Avengers deal is the last one we're going to see when it comes to that sort of exclusive content. And maybe instead of investing in a team, investing in those relationships so that you're the place people think I need to go to play Avengers, Call of Duty, Destiny, whatnot. Like, that may be where they're heading these days. Because, yeah, Sony has definitely tried in the past with games like Mag and Warhawk, and obviously like SOCOM more successfully, but they've intermittently tried to go like all in on multiplayer, and it just never quite stuck. And so I wonder if maybe they'll just look to third parties for that. But yeah, a studio, just before we switch topics, that I thought they would have picked up on the VR side would be Ready at Dawn, the people who made The Order and also the PSP God of War games. Obviously, they had a relationship with Sony, but they've gone like all in on VR, but Oculus scooped them up. And so that's, yeah, like you were saying, Max, another studio that's off the table, unfortunately, for PSVR. And like Janet was saying, like it further segments the VR user base, because now if I want to play arguably all the best VR games, I need 3 to 4 headsets, which is a little much for a 1-bedroom apartment. It's a little bit of a problem, but yeah, it's I wouldn't be surprised if we see more VR focus, but that probably won't come until they introduce whatever the new version of that hardware.
You know, it would be cool as hell if the PlayStation VR 2 was compatible with PC. Like we've seen Sony really like cool. dumping some of their first party stuff on PC, and it's like that would be a, you know, I mean they had that with like the Kinect, you know, not to invoke that awful thing, but like, you know, the idea is like, hey, this thing works with your console, but it also works with your PC if you want to mess with it. It might have been a separate version or something, but like there's, you know, theoretically no reason that you couldn't, like they make PSVR games on PC. Like it's not like that's, you know, it has to be exclusively PlayStation.
Totally. Yeah. And that speaks to, you know, the other thing they were saying about bringing other games to PC. And this came up a lot with the Horizon story, and people are like, oh no, Sony is abandoning the one thing that matters, their exclusives, and everything's over. And that's very clearly like they put out a 3-year-old game on PC 3 years after its launch, and that is the only PC game they announced at that time. Like they are very clearly doing to me at least, the model of bringing some of their older games to another wide platform to get interest in the games that they will then have exclusively going forward in the coming years. Like if someone plays Horizon on PC, doesn't have a PS4, but sees Horizon 2 is coming to PS5 and loved it, they might want to go buy a PS5 when maybe they didn't want to earlier. Like it makes sense on that business level, and I'm not surprised they're going to keep supporting that platform when it comes to that. I don't know if that shocks either of you, but that feels like just a very logical move.
Well, for me, I feel like when it's on PC, like it doesn't count. Like, and I mean that in a non-horrible way. It's just kind of like I feel like a lot of times when we talk about console exclusives, like that term is really evolved over time, and now it's sort of, oh, this is exclusive to Xbox, but it's also on PC. It's like, yeah, we don't talk about that part. And I think with PlayStation, it kind of runs similarly. Obviously, it's not a one-to-one because the way Microsoft functions with PC, it's essentially the same thing. They're interchangeable because you can just launch Game Pass on your computer, and it's almost the same service with the same stuff. I don't think PlayStation would ever get to that extent, but it's not shocking to see this kind of move. And it's also just a different market base. Like, I don't personally feel like I am losing the value of what my PS4 had if that game's also on PC, because the chances are, like, if you're a console player, you might not have a PC or be a big PC gamer. Like, I'm someone that owns a PC that can run games, and I use it sometimes to game, but I'm mainly a console player. So for me, when I'm thinking about what to get, like the easiest answer is always the PC. It has the most stuff, it's the most powerful, it's the most interchange. Like that's always the answer. But like I think everyone that, for the most part, people who buy consoles are in it for a different reason and like consoles because they like the simplicity and they like the culture that comes with it. And that's just that kind of lives separately from PC to begin with, for me at least.
Yeah, I personally, my enjoyment of games hinges entirely on how many people are allowed to play the game. So if less people can play it, I have more fun.
Exactly. Astro Bot was amazing.
It was.
It actually was amazing.
But, you just recently played it, right?
I did. I loved it so much. I'm so glad I got to play it because I finally, my living situation changed, and like I now live with my brother again, and I left my PSVR headset with him. So when he came over to LA where I now live, and he brought the headset, I'm like, I'm finally gonna play Astro Bot. I've been thinking about it for years. And it was so much fun. It's like such an old game, so I'm like, I know no one cares about this conversation.
Oh no, please. I love Astro Bot. So
it was like just such a joyful experience. And it's like so like rare to really feel like that pure joy from a game. Like a lot of times there's like, oh, you're having fun, or it's compelling, or it's difficult, or it's like gut wrenching, and those are all like positive things in their own way. But I'm like, Astro Bot's just fun. The music's amazing. You're like, it had like kind of a Super Mario Sunshine vibe with the way you could like hover, and there was that weird sexy spider boss that no one talked about, I feel like, enough. What was with that? I was confused. It was confusing time.
Hold on, I gotta look this up. This is
yeah, look up Astrobot. Probably just Astrobot spider boss, and that'll get you.
Yeah, it's horrifying because I did die during that boss, and if you die, the spider kisses you, and it's in VR, so you're like right there.
Oh yeah,
I don't need that.
This is scary. But
that's horrible.
That's a great game.
I feel like I played that over Christmas break, so it was one of those things where like I played that boss fight and was very confused, and then I came back to work and just the world was a different time, so no one remembered. I was like, oh yeah. I
keep meaning to drop that tweet like just one random Tuesday evening, like, hey, what's with that? Can we have a conversation on this? Because I wish I was in the room when they like were brainstorming or figuring that out, even though I don't know if that's how game dev works, where they're like, okay, it's like a spider, and you can use like the webs and all this stuff. Yeah, okay, I like that, but what if it was kind of sexy? And it's like, why does this guy keep bringing this up? Who lets you into this room?
Well, and then what was like, was it too sexy at one point? Was it not sexy enough? Like, where did they feel like, oh, we got to the right sexiness?
Exactly.
This is weird. Yeah.
All types of. It was memorable. That's
she looks like she'd be like hassling Courage the Cowardly Dog. Like there's something, and she's like, she seems like very like, she seems like sexually inclined, but like, she's also like, I don't know. She looks like somebody's aunt too, Yeah,
sure. It's got a lot of layers.
That'll be on our new PlayStation Therapy podcast that we'll get to.
That should have been, instead of this picture of Crash, it should just be that spider, spider lady.
Red, if you can find the spider lady, swap her in real quick.
No, less people need to see this image. I don't want to look at it anymore.
Moving on from all of that stuff from the corporate report and from this sexy spider boss, I did want to talk about another thing that came up this week when it came to the mysteries of the PlayStation 5. Because again, I feel like we could spend the hour just being like, hey, it's 2 months out. Why don't we know anything? But one of the weird things we don't know about is the full extent of backward compatibility, which I would say, since Sony first talked about it when it came to PS5 in February at like Mark Cerny's talk, the messaging has been confusing to begin with. They first announced it and were like, the top 100 games will mostly be playable. And then they were like, no, that was an example. And then they were like, the majority of all 4,000 games, but still haven't given many details on it. And they just outright will not say whether or not PS1, PS2, and PS3 games will be backward compatible. So this week there was a Ubisoft support page listing that said, hey, PS1 through PS3 games will not be supported. They are just not backward compatible on the PS5, so don't try to play them. Then that text disappeared from the Ubisoft support page. It's no longer mentioned. There's no mention of PS5 backward compatibility on the Ubisoft support site when you look for that stuff. It's all gone as of right now, and Sony hasn't officially commented. We reached out for comment, of course, and they haven't said anything. And we've talked a lot about, I think, what we're expecting from backward compatibility in this next generation. But I guess the first thing I want to ask both of you is, because it was not something we got when it came to the PS4, like we did not get any PS1 through PS3 physical or digital download backward compatibility in that way. Were you expecting, or does backward compatibility matter to you when looking forward to the next generation? Like, is that something that really will matter to you when you're deciding what to put money down on going into this next gen?
No, not for me. I mean, I'm all in anyway. So I'm going to try to like take that hat off for a second of like, I'm just going to buy whatever box you make because I like games. But I feel like backwards compatibility can be nice. And as a Nintendo fan, I'm like, we're always asking for like, we're not even asking to like carry it over. We're like, can I buy it again? Is that an option? So we're really, really like thirsty. Like it's just part of being a Nintendo fan. But the reason for that is because like the franchises just run so much like deeper and like longer than they do for any other company when it comes to Nintendo. Like with Sony, I didn't even play very much of like the PS1, and I got into the PS2, and like I do have fond memories of it. Like I'm always talking about Jak and Daxter whenever I'm here. Like I would love to own that on PS5 because I own it on literally every other console that's come up on. But it's not something that I feel like I need. Kind of to go back to what you were saying at the top of the show, there's so much new stuff coming out, and they keep kind of refreshing things. And sure, they do have some franchises that do have a long history, like Ratchet and Clank and God of War, if you're counting all the games and not just the sort of reboot. It makes it so that I'm not really like, oh, if I don't have backwards compatibility with the other consoles, I feel like I'm missing out on something. Like, I don't have that sentiment because of those reasons. Being that, one, there's always new stuff, and then two, the old stuff just doesn't, I don't want it as much. And that's not because it wasn't good. It's just not something that I'm like dying to be able to play the same way I am for maybe like a company like Nintendo. And then if you think on the other end of the spectrum with like what Xbox is doing, Xbox really needs to do as much as they can because they're lacking in new games and exclusive games, and the Halo just fell through, and like all they really have is Game Pass. So it makes sense that they have to do that. Like Sony's kind of in a position where they don't have to. That doesn't mean they shouldn't or that it wouldn't be nice. But because they're in a position where they don't have to, it also puts me in a position where I don't feel like I need those things because they're providing so much else when it comes to next gen.
Yeah, I think it's backwards compatibility with PS4 games is, I feel like that's a must.
The spider's here.
God damn it, get that out of here. Get it out of here. It's awful.
Okay, so those who are watching on video, though, it doesn't look sexy here, but it's meant to be. Like, if you see it, like,
yeah,
and this is just what I feel like they were going for. It's not what my interpretation, it is what I felt like they were giving me.
If someone's into that, I'm not going to knock it.
I was told this was a free space.
Got to be like a Rule 34 for that. That's not good. Anyways, what I was saying, I think like realistically, if I get a PlayStation 5, it's going to take a cool minute for me to be like, I can't wait to boot up my favorite PS3 games. Like I just feel like there's not a scenario where I'm going to be doing that. Like I honestly, like, I'll occasionally dip into like, I'll get like a weird, like, oh, what's a 360 game I miss playing? Or like, what's an older game I wanted to look up, and I'll check that like, that Xbox backwards compatibility list, and almost without fail, it's not the thing that I want to play isn't on there. So I'm just like, well, whatever. So much for that idea. It's always like some weird bad license thing that I have vaguely fond memories of. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird that we got in this position of like demanding backwards compatibility, and like I think it's great. I'm not against it, but as far as it being sort of like make or break, it's like, I mean, the idea of getting a new console is to play new games. Like that's kind of it, And like I think like having a huge library of digital games, you'd expect that would come with you, but I don't know, it's odd. Like I have, like, I don't do a lot of PC gaming, but I have a Steam account, and I've got a handful of games on there, and I've got some older stuff that just doesn't work. Like you got to do some like back end fidgeting around to get it to run properly. Like Brian and I tried to do a let's play of God, what was it? I want to say, oh, it was something not even that old. It was like Crazy Taxi or something, and we had to completely like fiddle around with the settings to get it to work properly. And it wasn't like, it's like playing on a freaking gaming PC. It's not like a hardware issue. It's just old software, and it didn't play well with whatever we had going on. So it's,
that happens on the iOS store too. Like there are just apps old games that just don't work anymore because they aren't supported by the way the new app store like restrictions work. So yeah, it's a strange time. Like I get why people would want the PS4 to PS5 jump, especially because like you were saying, Max, like we do have such a digital library, a lot of us now. So to be able to carry that over, but at least for me, like I don't have most of my PS2 discs anymore, so I am okay that I can't play PS2 discs in my PS5. I wish there was a better way, speaking sort of to the Nintendo side, like you were saying, Janet, if they offered a lot of those old games like on the PSN, I'd probably buy a few of them for like nostalgia's sake. And obviously, like when Nintendo did that, I bought them on the DS, on the Wii, on the Wii U. Like I was okay rebuying Super Mario World a dozen times because it's a great game, and there are probably PS1 and PS2 games I would rebuy several times because I love them. But it's that strange thing of, I think you totally nailed it, Janet. Like they don't have to, and so I get why they're not doing it right now. It's a weird time, and I wouldn't be surprised. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. I cut you off.
I was just going to say, I wouldn't be surprised if when eventually they do offer that stuff, they do really put the focus on PlayStation Now and the PS2 and PS3 games there that are available as the way to get those games.
For sure. If anything, I hope this makes them make PS Now better, because it's still just not an appealing service to me based on the price point and what they're offering, especially when admittedly, like as much as I love Game Pass, I don't know if I'm always getting my money's worth. I know it's a me problem, but I'm also the person that bought it. So I think they have some improvements to make on that. Like if they could somehow like replicate Game Pass, they would have literally everything. But I'm kind of surprised that people were so drawn to this like story of the possibility of lack of backward compatibility, because from the jump for PS5, like the marketing has just been over and over again. New console, new games, new controller. We're off that PS4 stuff. We're on PS5 now. It's PS5 time, and I feel like bringing in like, oh, by the way, you can play like your old PS2 games kind of goes against that whole narrative of like they're sort of trying to say this is so new it can't even comprehend that old like the old games that you have. Yeah, that's basically what their marketing has been and what they're kind of going for. This idea of like these are games that like can only be played on this hardware because this hardware allows for like designers to do things that like weren't possible, and they're really trying to like sell you on that. And sure, some of that might just be they want to sell you a new thing because it's more profitable, but some of it I think has a layer of truth to it. So it just makes sense to me that they're not looking at that as like a big selling point. And I'm guessing we haven't heard anything because the news is bad, and also kind of like why would we expect it? So I think they're like, I think the feeling is I can get away with not talking about the fact that's not backward compatible, which is technically a negative thing. So let's just do that.
Yeah.
Because just let people figure it out.
Yeah, I think that's totally a pretty good depiction of where we're at right
Red,
now.
you're doing such a good job all the time, especially today.
Oh my God.
Please look at the video version of this show. It's so good.
If you are watching or if you're listening to the audio version, I definitely recommend understanding Max's bewilderment at what we have going on the video.
I love that little robot so much.
He's great. It's great how he went from like that pack-in thing on the PS4 that I'm like, why would I want this? It's in a junk folder on my PS4 to like, oh, Astro Bot's one of my favorite games of the generation.
But he's a pack-in again.
Yeah.
He got like repackaged.
I feel like that's the life of the Astro Bot. It will be pack-in, great game, pack-in, great game when Astro Bot 2 comes out. Which could be potentially years from now. So who knows? But I do want to talk about something that we should be finding out about within the next few weeks when it comes to when we'll be able to buy PS5s. And Janet, this kind of goes back to what you were saying of like, I'm all in, I've accepted, I'm buying this box, so I'm just going to buy it. But last week, up on the official PlayStation site, out of nowhere, not announced, not touted at all by PlayStation. There just went up a page that was like, hey, put in your PSN ID, and based on your past PlayStation history, you might be able to pre-order a PS5 from us. That is where we're at in the PS5 pre-order story right now. It's very possible by the end of this episode or by the time it goes up tomorrow, PS5 pre-orders are announced in official capacity because that's just how it works. But where we're at right now is put your name in a lottery and hope that maybe Herman picks your name out of a virtual hat.
That's not how you sell a console. That's how you tell somebody that you'll keep their resume on file, but we're not hiring right now. Like to just be like, yeah, I mean, if we feel like selling it, we'll let you know. But right now, it's just like, what is that? I signed up for it though. I want.
Yeah. I hate the situation, but it is also hilarious. So I can appreciate the hilarity of it. But it feels like when this happened, I put up, this is going to be a very specific reference to like only a few of you out there. But if you watch Grey's Anatomy, that speech that Meredith gives Derek of like, so pick me, choose me, love me, that little speech where she's just so desperate, but just like professing her love to someone who clearly doesn't, like, is just going to like burn you. Spoilers for Grey's Anatomy. And then also not, it's really long. But that's what I feel like this is. It's like, this is a relationship where clearly I am desperate and you not only don't care, but you're just like very open about it. You're like, I'll see you or not, maybe. Oh, wait, was that tonight? I can't. How was it? Like, stop texting me. Also, I should have deleted your number.
Were we supposed to hang out this holiday? That's actually next holiday. I'm sorry. Yeah. That's where it's coming in. Hey, Astrobot. Hey, buddy.
So accurate. So, and then I think that it's really vague. I'd feel so much like less weirded out if they were like, we're going to pick people at random. Like, we'll see. Like, we will only send out like X amount. And then you have like this time to redeem it. Like, kind of like, I've signed up for things like limited run games. That's kind of how their stuff works. Like, you sign up and if not, you're on a wait list. And then they kind of just go down. Like, if the people that got in don't respond or buy it in a certain amount of time, then they go through the wait list. That feels very logical to me. But this whole like, based on your previous PlayStation history, I'm like, damn, are they gonna like not give me the PS5 because I don't have enough trophies?
That's my fear. They're gonna be like, oh, you're a fake gamer. You don't platinum everything.
Yeah, there's no indication of like, is it platinum trophies? Is it number of trophies? Is it number of games? Is it number of hours? Is it just first party games they'll give you a special nod for? It's so
just start turning on all these different, maybe they're trying to raise activity through people's paranoia. Just start turning on games and like letting them run for like dozens of hours.
There are games that you can buy, just get like a platinum in 5 minutes. Just go buy all those games, get those platinum trophies, and you'll be good to go for PS5.
Finally gonna dive into I Am Bread. Let's go.
But yeah, it's that strange thing of, I will say, I guess it does, for like us not talking about this, for maybe just someone randomly signing up, it does create the like illusion and maybe the real, reality of how much they're able to manufacture. But like, hey, this is going to be a limited run thing this fall. Like there are only going to be so many PS5s to get, and they're expecting a high demand. So make sure you are doing everything you can to get in. Like it does create that air of, hey, maybe it's going to be really hard to get a PS5 this holiday. And that becomes one of the big stories. Like when the Wii came out, it was, everyone was like, I've been going to Targets every Sunday for the last 3 months and I can't get a Wii. Why are they sold out? And it became this thing, and Nintendo's sort of like the talk of forced scarcity is, I think, what we talk about a lot with them, because it's never something official, but we always kind of assume there's a little bit of stock being held back is a common thread when it comes to Nintendo. And so I wouldn't be shocked if that's what we're getting this holiday, but also there's no indication of how many PS5s we're going to be working with this fall. It's weird.
Also, I feel like this isn't what I was expecting when like it came out that PS5 pre-orders won't be a surprise. This feels very monkey's paw of that. Like, oh, but we'll email you through this email link to your account. Hope you have it. Hope you didn't mark PlayStation as spam like I did, because I got too many emails from them. And then like hope that like you see it in time, because like I also don't know, are they going to pass on people? I would assume they would pass on people who don't end up actually pre-ordering, but like what is the time on that? Like I don't like having email notifications set up on my phone. Like this has just all become a very like stressful time. Like it feels like this, and then also they didn't announce to sign up, they just kind of posted it. So yeah, I am kind of suspicious now on just how much notice like I'll be getting to make this purchase, or if you'll even tell me I can make the purchase. Like it's becoming a very stressful time, and I don't like it. It is funny, but I don't like it.
Yeah, with our luck, the pre-orders will go up at like 3 a.m. on a Sunday, and we'll just wake up to them all being sold out. I remember, I think it was when Switch pre-sales went up, I was like on the train home and had Andrew Goldfarber, old coworker, text me like, hey, pre-orders are up. I didn't respond for 5 minutes. So he was like, hey, I pre-ordered you one just in case you can pay me back. And I was like, oh, thank God. That was so nice of you. But like, is that where we're going to be in a week or two? Just like
Goldfarb and Brian are both so good about that. Like that was the same deal with like opening night, like Star Wars tickets and stuff. They were always like super on top of it. And I was just sort of like, I don't know, I'm just like hanging out. Like they would just text me and I'd be like, I guess I'll buy some of these. Like
it was very convenient.
Yeah. Jobert and I, Jobert on our video team, he and I would do that for like most major video movie releases. He and I basically, as soon as the tickets would go on sale, would buy like 30 and then Slack the whole IGN team and be like, okay, who wants to go? We have tickets. So it's going to be weird. Yeah, it's like you can only pre-order one PS5. There is that. So if you were a lucky golden ticket winner, you will only be able to pre-order one of the disc or discless versions. Your choice, but we'll see what actually happens there. Of course, other retailers will be selling it. Sorry, Janet, go ahead.
I'm about to make my dad like a PSN account so I can just get more chances to like get the notification, because I'm just worried I'm not going to get like called up,
I signed my girlfriend's account up for it too, just in case. Like 2 chances is better than 1.
I'm like, someone's going to get this email. That's all I know.
Exactly. I can't. I hope there's no recognition of it, and just suddenly on Twitter we see some random person we've never heard of. It's just like, I got it. I got the PS5, and that's how it begins. And it's just a slow, weird rollout. It feels like that's kind of what we're in for. Of course, when PS5 pre-orders do get announced or official or any of that, we'll be talking about that on the show. But I do want to move on to briefly talk about, before we get into some of maybe what we're playing or just all that stuff, I do want to quickly touch on, since we were off last week, there's been a lot of big, both this gen and next gen games sort of talked about, whether between Gamescom, other events, or just other announcements, DC Fandom. A lot of big games have gotten showcased, announced, release dates, deeper look. So I want to sort of like rapid fire, go through some of the biggest ones I remembered, and ask both of you just if anything in particular stood out from the last couple weeks of like before the fall rush begins. What games are we really excited about on the way? The first two I wanted to begin with, of course, were the DC fandom announcements, which were after months and years of rumors. The new Batman game is not starring Batman because Batman is dead in Gotham Knights. That's the new WB Games Montreal game. It is third-person action, sort of in the style of the Batman Arkham games. It is not in the Batman Arkham universe. You can play with up to 2-player co-op. I do want to tout Joe Screbbles on our news team. He did a really, really good in-depth interview with them after the announcement and got a ton more details about sort of progression, whether there's level gating, co-op, single player, just the differences between all of that. But I want to ask both of you, what were sort of your impressions of, we saw the reveal trailer and like a 6-7 minute gameplay slice. Are you both excited? Are you Batman Arkham fans? Are you less excited? What did this reveal do or not do for you?
Do you want to go first, Janet?
I'll start with Janet.
Sure. Yeah, that didn't turn out how I hoped it would in my head, but looks good. I mean, that's like kind of a boring, like quick take, but I played only a little bit of the Batman Arkham games. It was part of my project and still is part of my project of playing through the IGN top 100 games of all time that I haven't spent time with. It's like a sub list within a list. It was awesome. It totally lived up. I enjoyed it a lot. This one looks interesting. I'm curious as to how, like, I think one of the criticisms, especially in the modern era of those games, is that they're not very open. Now, granted, I don't think every game needs to be open, but it's definitely a way that those games show their age. So I think having sort of like this leveling system where you can theoretically kind of go anywhere or do things in different orders is interesting in terms of opening that element of the game up. I am never really that big of a fan of any form of level scaling. I do think they're taking an interesting approach where it's not just like simplistic level scaling. It's a little bit more layered in terms of, you'll see like different kinds of attacks and these like all these wide variations depending on when you encounter like say a boss and depending on what level you're at. So I'm curious as to how that'll play out. I'm a little apprehensive of that specific part just because it's like not really something that I enjoy. Like when there is like grinding or like leveling, I like to be able to have the option to be super powered if I want to be, or if I end up being just from how much I play and how much side content I do. But in terms of just what the game looks like, looks awesome, looks fun, looks very much in the style of like what the previous games have done well. So feeling optimistic about this one.
Yeah, I think it looks good again, but totally in a way that I'm not remotely interested in. Like I'm curious about that city, but I was like totally hoping it would be, the single player, evolution of the Arkham games, something along those lines. Also, like I like Batman. A lot of people really like Batman. It's sort of ridiculous how much like non-Batman stuff we have. Like we just like, I get that it's a whole universe full of characters. You can do whatever. And that a lot of people want to, they want to do the Bat family or whatever. But I kind of was just sort of hoping we just get like a new Batman game. And it's like, great news, everyone, Batman's dead. And it's like, what the I don't want Batman to be dead. I like being Batman.
I do wish they would call it the Bat Family instead of Gotham Knights. That's a fun title.
Oh no, Red, stop that. Red's doing things with the Crash Bandicoot photograph for those who just listen to
what is that photograph? I don't want to know. Never mind.
That's from my hard drive. No,
sounds about right.
I don't know. Like here's the thing. I just don't really do co-op games. Like I don't have that sort of social side. Like I kind of just like to get lost in these fake worlds. And I totally get that. That's the hotness right now. That's the thing that people want to do. That's the thing that companies want to capitalize on. But it's sort of weird to be like, great news. Here's here's the Avengers, and it's like, oh, it's a big social experience. Like, oh, here's the Bat family game, the with Arkham Knights, whatever. Yeah, but it's like here's you and some friends go cause mayhem, cause a ruckus, whatever. And then like Suicide Squad feels like, I mean, we obviously have no idea what that game is because it's still like 2 years out. But like,
yeah.
I feel like it's just the same thing with just like a different aesthetic and tone. It's just
that was really interesting to me to see that when it was like Gotham Knights was announced as this co-op thing, and then Suicide Squad is also this co-op thing, and I'm like, are they largely going to be the same? Like obviously different stories and different universes and whatnot, so they'll have some differences. But yeah, it felt like, oh, so just probably two variations of the same game. But that's like you said, we haven't seen any gameplay of Suicide Squad, so don't know. Yeah, we'll have to wait on that one for sure. I do want to ask about Ratchet and Clank though. We saw the extended demo at Gamescom Opening Night Live. That one, it was basically a longer version of the demo that was featured in the PS5 reveal event, which is also sort of the trailer for it. This was just uncut gameplay running on PS5. They confirmed it's a launch window game. Who knows how long that window extends for, because I don't think anyone has ever properly defined what a launch window is. Max, I'll start with you. Did you like anything particularly excite you about the demo?
Like, I'm totally like with this game, I'm like when dogs see the TV. Like sometimes like I'll stare at it for a second, but for the most part, it just kind of like I don't pay attention. And that's not that I'm not interested in it. I really love the last game. I thought it was really fun, but it's totally like it's this weird ambivalence because I don't care about the characters or the world. Like I don't have any actual fandom. I just recognize that it's a really fun game to play.
Sure.
And so there's this part of me where I'm just like, I don't really care about trailers. Like I saw the one, at the big reveal event. I was like, oh, it looks really good. It looks very impressive. It's technically impressive, but like, I don't know, like I'm excited to play it. I will absolutely play it, but I just am like, I don't really need to, like, they've kind of already sold me and I'm like, yeah, I have faith that it will be an enjoyable gameplay experience, but watching footage of the gameplay does nothing for me. If anything, it'll just make it less exciting when I play the game myself,
Yeah, I'm very much like I'm a pretty big fan of the Ratchet franchise, and I'm very much like I'm sold. I didn't need this. I'm glad it's a launch window game. Like I'm glad it's coming soon, but I just want to play it. I just want to see how they're using the SSD and doing these cool riffs and everything. Janet, did it hit you any particular way? I know you're a Jack and Daxter fan when it comes to the Sony side of things, but
do I have any Ratchet? Gosh, I probably don't have any Ratchet and Clank games. I just have this random PSP one, so it doesn't really count that much because it's just Ratchet and Clank size matters. Yeah, I mean, I like Ratchet and Clank. I think I am branded the Ratchet and Clank hater because I just haven't cared that much about the games lately. What I'm really looking for in this game and what we're getting hints at in the trailers, but we won't really know until we go like hands-on and actually play it, is like what they're going to do to like shake up the gameplay, because it's good. It's always a good/great time. Guns are fun. Platforming is good. Like Ratchet and Clank, it's a known quantity, and I'm looking forward to the potential of being surprised by something. I think the way that you can use like these sort of like portals, for lack of a better term, or like rifts, to kind of sort of go through areas within one space, but also like going to different like worlds, also for lack of a better term, can be interesting. Like I think they might add a level of verticality to the gameplay and to like the combat that I think could refresh it. Just because for me, it's like, oh, it's fun. There's gadgets. It's cool. Like it just kind of, I love that franchise a lot, but it sort of grew stale for me for that reason. So gotcha. I do see hints at this reinvigorating things, and that's what I'm looking forward to. It also just looks gorgeous. Like it looks like you're playing like a cartoon show, which is like really impressive. But yeah, like much like Max, I'm not really here for the lore, though I am curious. I'm like, wait, how does everything I'm like, I'm gonna have to watch like in 5 minutes to like, I'm like, he's still doing things. All right.
Yeah, Dr. Nefarious and everything. Yeah, Dr. I realized
Nefarious. Still so well employed.
Still being nefarious. Yeah, this one, Marcus Smith said afterwards, I believe it was him, that this game ties into Ratchet and Clank Into the Nexus, which was the last PS3 Ratchet and Clank game, which the 2016 reboot wasn't a sequel to, since it was, a reboot remake of the original. So that's definitely an older game, and I think one of the less played Ratchet and Clank. So I'm curious. I don't know how contingent on the stories they've told it's really going to be, especially with this being like the debut on PS5, but I'm curious how they nod to the franchise history for sure. I do want to move on from that big stuff that we're looking ahead to, though, before we wrap up, just to quickly ask, I know Gamescom and now new releases have been keeping us pretty busy, but I was curious if you guys have been playing anything. Max, I want to start with you. I know last we spoke, Dark Souls 3 had enraptured you. Are you still playing?
I love it. I'm having such a good time with it. I'm still chugging away. It is so much easier than Bloodborne was the first time around, and I don't know if that's because I've gotten better at games, or if it's an easier experience, or if I just know what I'm doing more. But yeah, I'm a good chunk of the way through that game. I think I've sunk like 40 hours into it, and I'm at the Eldritch Devourer of Gods or something in Anor Londo. Which there's so many words in those games where I'm just like, I don't know what that means. But no, I'm having a good time with that. Yeah, it feels like totally pathetic to be like really in on a game from like 2018 and just being really psyched about it. And it's like, why didn't you play this when it came out and people were talking about it and being like late to the party? So
it happens.
Yeah.
I'm playing stuff from 3 or 4 years ago. Janet, you just mentioned Astro Bot. It's one of those things like, yeah, we have to get to some stuff when we get to it. It's okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, Gamescom, if I seem at all sort of scatterbrained or low energy, Gamescom definitely took a lot out of us. And there's always like, even when we have like an online event, it's still this weird sort of like slump that happens afterwards where I'm just like, just kind of spaced out and just just tired from being go for a few days. But
absolutely.
Yeah, we got some cool reviews, reveals at Gamescom. I think I'm like officially excited for that new Lego Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Which I think it's just like it'll be such like a fun, safe bet of just like, hey, yeah, Lego Star Wars sold. Let's do it. Let's have fun. I'm bummed it got delayed, but yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those ones I was looking forward to it for this fall. It got pushed to spring 2021, but it's one of those, there's like 5 or 6 massive open world games this fall that we'll be playing alongside the console launches. So I'm happy to have it next spring, sort of when I need something a little fun and wackier to like as a palate cleanser from all that stuff. Janet, what about you? I know you've been playing Astro Bot, but you also did a review recently on IGN, not PlayStation related, but still.
Yeah, I recently reviewed Tell Me Why. So that review is up on the site and on YouTube. It's for all 3 chapters, which is a new thing that we've gotten to do where they just gave us the whole game. We got to just review it all at once instead of episode by episode. So check that out. It's fairly like non-spoilery. Like I tried not to say any plot points other than things that happened literally in the first like 5 minutes of the game. So that's up. And then I am playing Marvel's Avengers because I'm working on the guide. So I know it may come as a surprise because I was pretty negative on that game, but you know, the job is the job. And I'm actually enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. Granted, I thought I would not enjoy it. So that bar was admittedly low, but it's a pretty good time. The story is interesting. It's definitely very like straightforward and run of the mill. So like I'm having fun with the platforming, but it's not like the platforming is crazy intensive. It just feels good to kind of like swing around in the world. And I think that the characters control really well and the abilities are interesting. So that's mainly what I'll be playing for the foreseeable future. I'm going to try to sneak in some games that recently came out, like Spiritfarer. I really want to play. I like want to play that game so bad, but I just have not had time. And I'm really trying to catch up on anything that we are considering for awards for 2020, be it Game of the Year or just like notables. I'm definitely behind, but I'm trying to catch up. So I'm going to be looking at filling those gaps in the coming weeks and months, hopefully, before we have to actually give our opinions. So I'll have opinions to give. That's the ideal, at least.
No, I know what you mean. I feel like even though we've been obviously home more, I feel like I've had less time to play games just because of adjusting and the way our workflow has changed and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm definitely right there with you. Spiritfarer is one of those ones. And when Lucy's back on the show, she has every intention to gush about the game. She's absolutely loving it, and I'll let her speak to that when she's back on. But yeah, I'm with you playing Avengers, liking it more than like the beta left me like, oh yeah, I'll enjoy this enough, I guess. But the story has been really enjoyable so far. I do not know how it's going to feel as a game I play for weeks and months to come. That's definitely a like, we'll see how that goes. But at least campaign wise, I like what they're doing so far for sure. But I believe, unfortunately, we're at time, and unless Red has any other surprise Crash Bandicoots to show us, I think we'll wrap it up for this episode of Podcast Beyond. Thank you to Red, our producer, and thank you to Janet and Max for being on this week with me. Wanted to give a shout out just to both of you. One, Max, amazing job on Gamescom and all of that to you. And obviously the whole team, I just want to tell like the entire IGN team put so much work into this event. Obviously it's an all digital one, as Max was saying, but it was still a huge team effort. And so thank you for all the work you put into it. And thank you to anyone who watched live, tuned into VOD stuff, just checked it out. It obviously was a really, really big team affair. So thank you for checking all that stuff out. And thank you for everything you guys did for that. And Janet, best of luck with this fall to come. Obviously we'll have you on to some of the biggest games show up, but I like on the guide side, it's like, man, it's going to be a crazy year for that stuff. So
yeah,
I'm not envious of that necessarily, but I'm excited to see all the work you guys do. Always extremely helpful. And I use our guides far too often because I get lost very easily. So thank you for all you guys are doing.
Thank you for getting lost.
Yeah, of course, anytime. But yeah, I just want to, before we wrap up, miss you both, miss being in the office together, miss, saying hi and making dumb jokes in person. But it's nice to be able to at least check in with you all periodically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that's going to wrap it up before I get any sappier. Thank you so much for listening and or watching this episode of Beyond. Beyond is normally live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific at beyond.ign.com, youtube.com/IGNBeyond, and your favorite podcast services around the world. Since we're off for a week, apologies if you forgot about us, but we're back and definitely going to be covering the crazy fall slate of games and new consoles as they actually get information about them. So hope you'll tune in for the ride as we go through it all together. But that wraps us up for this week. So thank you so much for watching and listening. And as always, Beyond.
Beyond.